People who know everything are told their knowledge will translate into achievement and success. What if I told you knowledge without action actually prevents achievement more than ignorance does? This sounds impossible because we believe understanding creates advantage and informed people outperform uninformed ones. But there's something that doesn't quite add up. Why do the most knowledgeable people often accomplish less than those who know nothing? The knowledge paralysis trap works by substituting learning for doing until information becomes procrastination. You study success principles instead of attempting anything that might succeed or fail. Think about the last course you completed or book you read. Did it lead to action or just more learning about what action requires? The system creates two completely different relationships with achievement depending on knowledge accumulation patterns. For ignorant people, action comes first, and knowledge develops through experience. They try things, fail, learn what works, and iterate toward success. For knowledgeable people, learning comes first, and action waits for sufficient information. They study endlessly but never feel ready to actually attempt anything. This explains something curious about how different types approach the same opportunity. Subscribe to Prof. Jung. Explained if you want to see how information serves different purposes for different people. Share this with someone who has read every business book but never started a business. Ignorant people accumulate experience through trial and error. Knowledgeable people accumulate information about what they should theoretically do. Same starting point, completely different trajectories. Consider how each group handles starting a business. The ignorant person has an idea and immediately tries selling something. They don't know about market research, business plans, or competitive analysis. They just start and learn what works through direct feedback. The knowledgeable person studies entrepreneurship for years. They read case studies, take courses, and analyze successful companies. But they never actually start anything because they keep discovering more they need to learn first. The preparation addiction creates what psychologists might call the competence illusion. Knowledgeable people feel they're making progress by learning. Each book completed or course finished feels like moving toward goals. But learning about doing isn't doing. You can study swimming for decades without becoming a swimmer. Only swimming makes you a swimmer regardless of theoretical knowledge. But here's where the strategy becomes more sophisticated. Knowledge doesn't just delay action. It actually raises standards to impossible levels. When you know what excellence looks like, anything less feels like failure. The ignorant person has no reference point for excellence. They try their version and feel satisfied with results. The knowledgeable person compares their hypothetical attempts to expert performance and decides not to try at all. Do you spend more time learning how to do things than actually doing them? The time allocation reveals the trap. Knowledgeable people dedicate enormous hours to studying best practices and optimal approaches. Ignorant people spend the same hours doing imperfect versions and improving through practice. One group becomes expert on theory. The other group becomes experienced through reality. The system also exploits what strategists call the analysis paralysis feedback loop. Knowledgeable people analyze why things fail. This makes them better at predicting failure. Better failure prediction makes them less likely to attempt anything. Less attempts means less experience. Less experience means more reliance on theoretical knowledge. The cycle reinforces itself until action becomes impossible. Consider how different types handle creative work. The ignorant writer starts writing badly and improves through volume. They produce terrible first drafts and learn by doing it wrong repeatedly. The knowledgeable writer studies great literature and writing techniques extensively. They understand story structure and prose mechanics theoretically, but they can't write anything because they know it won't match expert standards. One person writes poorly, then improves. The other person writes nothing while knowing exactly what great writing requires. The standard gap creates permanent dissatisfaction for knowledgeable people. They can identify every flaw in their potential work before creating it. This makes creation feel pointless. Why produce something you know is flawed? The ignorant person can't identify flaws in their work. They think their terrible first attempts are acceptable. This delusion allows them to produce volume and actually improve over time. But there's something even more insidious about how knowledge prevents skill development. Skills develop through repetition with feedback. You try something, get results, adjust approach, repeat. Knowledge interrupts this cycle by making you think about optimal approach before attempting anything. The thinking replaces the doing. You never get the repetitions that build actual skill. The repetition deficit means knowledgeable people plateau at theoretical understanding without practical competence. They can explain how to do things perfectly. They cannot actually do those things at all. Ignorant people plateau at practical competence without theoretical understanding. They can do things effectively. They cannot explain how they do them. One group teaches, the other group achieves. Have you ever met someone who gives excellent advice but can't follow it themselves? The advice achievement gap reveals the knowledge trap. Understanding what should be done is completely different from having the capability to do it. Capability comes from practice. Practice requires doing things badly before doing them well. Knowledge makes you unwilling to do things badly. This prevents developing capability entirely. The system maintains itself through what we might call the learning identity trap. Knowledgeable people define themselves as learners and students. This identity provides social status without requiring achievement. Being well-read or well-educated is socially valued. Actually attempting things and failing is socially embarrassing. The identity allows feeling accomplished while producing nothing. But perhaps the most sophisticated aspect involves how knowledge creates option awareness that prevents commitment. Ignorant people don't know all the ways things could go wrong. They commit fully because they're unaware of risks. Knowledgeable people know every possible failure mode. This awareness makes full commitment feel reckless. They hedge and prepare contingencies instead of going all in. There's also a vulnerability dimension where knowledge prevents authentic attempts. Ignorant people fail obviously because they don't know what they're doing. This failure is expected and acceptable. Knowledgeable people who fail after extensive preparation reveal their knowledge was insufficient. This failure is humiliating. The fear of informed failure prevents attempting anything where failure is possible. Consider how different types handle public speaking. The ignorant person agrees to speak and figures it out while preparing. They're nervous, but they do it. The experience teaches them more than any course could. The knowledgeable person studies public speaking extensively. They know about vocal variety, body language, and audience engagement. But they decline speaking opportunities because they know they can't execute perfectly. One person improves through experience. The other person stays knowledgeable but incompetent. The experience gap compounds over time because ignorant people accumulate reference experiences that knowledge can't provide. They know what it feels like to fail and recover. They understand their actual capabilities under pressure. They develop tacit knowledge that can't be taught. Knowledgeable people have no reference experiences. They remain perpetually theoretical about capabilities they've never tested. But there's another layer that makes this particularly destructive. Knowledge creates awareness of complexity that ignorance doesn't perceive. Every task looks simple until you study it deeply. Then you discover all the nuance and difficulty involved. This complexity awareness makes starting feel overwhelming. The ignorant person sees simple task and starts. The knowledgeable person sees complex system and hesitates. The complexity paralysis means knowledgeable people get stuck in planning while ignorant people get stuck in doing. Planning feels productive but produces nothing. Doing produces results even when done poorly. Over years, the doer accumulates achievements despite imperfect execution. The planner accumulates plans that never get implemented. One person has messy results, the other person has perfect plans for results that don't exist. This creates what behavioral economists call the preparation plateau. Knowledgeable people reach a point where additional learning provides no benefit. They already know enough to start, but they keep learning because starting means confronting knowledge capability gap. Learning becomes avoidance disguised as diligence. The plateau reveals itself in credential accumulation without application. 3 degrees but no career. 10 certifications but no clients. 500 books read but nothing written. Credentials prove learning happened. Absence of achievement proves learning substituted for doing. There's also a social proof dimension, where knowledgeable people surround themselves with other non-doers. They join communities discussing ideas rather than implementing them. Everyone shares what they learned. Nobody shares what they built. The environment prevents recognizing the problem. Do you have conversations about ideas or conversations about results? The conversation type reveals whether you're in knowledge communities or achievement communities. Knowledge communities discuss concepts, theories, and what should be done. Achievement communities discuss what was tried, what worked, what failed, and what's next. One group bonds over shared understanding. The other group bonds over shared experience. Can you think of anyone who became successful by studying success instead of attempting things? The achievement pattern reveals the strategy's failure. Every successful person has more experience than knowledge. They learned through doing, not through studying. Meanwhile, people who studied success extensively remain unsuccessful because study replaced action rather than enabling it. The knowledge addiction also manifests in what programmers call tutorial hell. You complete tutorial after tutorial learning how others solve problems, but you never solve your own problems. Each tutorial feels like progress. You're learning new techniques and approaches, but you're not developing the problem-solving capability that comes from struggling through challenges independently. The tutorial provides the answer before you develop the thinking that would have reached that answer. This pattern extends beyond programming to every domain. You watch cooking videos instead of cooking badly. You read fitness articles instead of exercising incorrectly. You study relationship advice instead of having awkward conversations. The consumption of processed knowledge replaces the messy process of gaining direct experience. You feel like you're improving because information is accumulating, but capability isn't developing because struggle isn't happening. The struggle avoidance means knowledgeable people never develop frustration tolerance. They quit when things get difficult because difficulty feels like they're doing it wrong. The tutorial made it look easy. If it's hard, they must lack some additional knowledge. So they stop doing and search for more information. Ignorant people expect difficulty because they don't know it should be easy. They persist through frustration and develop capacity that knowledge alone never provides. The system perpetuates itself because knowledgeable people who finally act get celebrated as proof that preparation works. Those who never act get blamed for not applying their knowledge rather than recognizing that knowledge itself prevented application. Meanwhile, ignorant people who succeed get dismissed as lucky when they actually benefited from starting before knowing all the reasons not to. And perhaps most remarkably, the system has convinced people that knowing how to do something is the same as being able to do it, when understanding that knowledge and capability are completely different, and one often prevents developing the other, because learning about doing becomes a sophisticated substitute for actually doing anything at all.